Is this man Hades or Lucifer? Is Heath a fire elemental, a demon, or an actual Greek god or demigod? Which is it? Make up your mind, Monster High. Sorry about that. As some of you may know, I have a bit of a fascination for folklore and mythology. Something of a special interest, you might even say. So, of course, with a series like Monster High, I am practically honor-bound to take a peek at some of the mythological aspects here. Especially Heath, because no. We're focusing on Gen 3, but some of this stuff is applicable across series. Obvious disclaimer that I'm making this video right as Season 2 has started airing, so some questions or info might become outdated, or get answered quickly. Also, don't take this too seriously. We're just having a bit of fun and giving me an excuse to talk about folklore and mythology, and a little bit of history, starting with what the actual hell is this timeline. I don't think I necessarily need to point out why some of the gimmick ages for the characters make no sense, but here goes. For someone like Frankie, who was all of 15 days old at the start of the series, the gimmick age makes much more sense. Being a Frankenmonster, they were literally born a teenager. It's with the immortal or pseudo-immortal characters that things get strange. First, this is a high school setting. For characters like Cleo or Dracula, who are supposedly thousands of years old, are they going to have to spend, 400 years give or take, here before they graduate? And where are they actually at, developmentally speaking? In 4 years, is Dracula still gonna be a teenager while most of her friends are adults? There's another issue with Drac specifically, though, because she's supposed to be 1600 years old, right? Which would make her a minimum of 592 years older than Vlad III, aka Vlad the Impaler, aka Dracula. You know, her father. Assuming the first season takes place in 2023. And we know that MH's Dracula is that Dracula because of this lovely little line right here.
I am literally a literary classic!
Which brings up the very interesting question of what the hell was MH's Bram Stoker to Dracula? A random human who saw a little too much and let his imagination run wild? Someone who collected and organized reports of actual events? A bitter ex? Either way, even if he isn't literally Vlad the Impaler, his name is Dracula, he's definitely noble, and he's from modern-day Romania. He'd have to be from the House of Draculesti, which was founded by Vlad II Dracul, Vlad III's father, when Dracula was supposedly already
over 900
years old. Then again, given Dracula identifies her dad as Transylvanian instead of Wallachian, it kind of makes sense for him to be Vlad III, as he was born in Transylvania. Still a little weird considering he was very much Wallachian regardless, but it's whatever. Perhaps it's a bit too deep of a cut to expect from a kid's show. I do quite appreciate that Dracula's mother is Taiwanese, though. I'd like to actually see her on screen sometime to see if any Jiangxi lore has made it into her character. I'd assume so, given how Dracula's diet works in this generation. Sure, Drac's vegetarian diet is very much in conflict with the idea of draining ki from living beings to maintain her own existence, but its ethereal nature makes it a lot closer than the literal blood-sucking of Bram Stoker's Dracula. To continue existing, Dracula explains she subsists on perfect performances, otherwise she will begin to literally decay. Except that's not quite right, because at the end of that episode, she learns to loosen up on her perfectionism a little bit and gains energy from just letting go and having fun with her friends. Maybe her dad thought it had to be performance-related because vegetarian vampires are so rare that no one's actually figured out how they work yet. Other than that, she's pretty classic as far as modern vampires go. She's vulnerable to sunlight, which, of course, anyone who's followed the modern phenomenon that is Dracula daily can tell you that Dracula actually wasn't. Sure, he lost a lot of his power during daylight, but the sun didn't burn him. She's immortal, undead, has no reflection, can transform into a bat, levitate, climb along surfaces that should not be climbable, has some kind of hypnotic ability, can not enter somewhere without being invited, and is allergic to garlic. Also a wooden stake through the heart. Though, as has been said plenty of times before, if you ram a wooden stake into anyone's heart, you're liable to make them very dead very fast. Jury remains out on a lot of Dracula's other documented abilities and weaknesses. Except the shadow. Dracula very much does cast a shadow. She also probably doesn't have super strength. Maybe. Personally, I am going to headcanon that a branch of wild rose on her coffin will leave her unable to wake, because that just seems on brand for Dracula, doesn't it? Now, before we get into the heath of the matter, let's fire off some quick ones. The matter of witchcraft being banned in the monster community had me pretty interested in what that means for all the folkloric witches out there. Dracula's brief reference to making houses out of gingerbread at craft camp.
I mastered alchemy, manifestation, and making houses out of gingerbread.
Makes me think that at least most of the fairy tale witches are classed as human witches, and that's that. That still leaves some figures a bit up for interpretation, though. Baba Yaga, for example, she's certainly not human, but she's most famous for being a witch. Has this monster-wide ban on witchcraft just, stomped out entire cultural practices within certain family lines? I hope not, but we won't have answers to that until the series gives them to us, if it ever does. I like how they gave Cleo some mummy magic for the purposes of cursing her enemies. Would like some clarification on how a mummy's curse is different from a witch's curse, but still. And I do like that she specifically called herself out as outside of the norm when she pointed out that she had all of her organs jarred, even though she definitely didn't, because last I checked, the skin, eyes, and tongue are all organs, and she certainly still has those. Still, she's jarred more organs than most mummies usually do. The question is why, if having them outside of her body puts her at risk. A popular theory in the comments of my last video was that it could potentially make her more powerful, which sounds plausible, so I'm gonna roll with that for now. Regardless, I don't think I have to say that usually the inner ear wasn't among the organs removed from a mummy in ancient Egypt. Actually, there were only 4, stored in a set of canopic jars, modeled after the 4 sons of Horus. They contained the stomach, intestines, lungs, and liver. Notably, not the heart, because that was the seat of the soul, so they left that in the body. Which, despite the fact that Cleo has removed hers, kind of tracks with how it functions as her literal emotional core in the show. So, it's give and take, I guess. I kind of wish were-creatures had a more purely animal form to go with their human and anthropomorphic forms. I could say that's because most of the older werewolf-adjacent tales tend to go for pure transformation into a wolf, but honestly, it's just because I personally think it would be cool. I do, however, like the switch-up of were-creatures being in their more animal form as a baseline, but turning human under the light of a full moon. A neat way to subvert expectations, that. What I'm not a massive fan of is how we're still doing the old, wildly outdated might makes right fight for the position of the alpha thing. Like, we're all aware that that study's been discredited at this point, right? Also, wow, the fox is a cunning, sneaky, secret villain. How extremely shocking. I am absolutely stunned. Truly a visionary take. I love that they changed Abby's nationality.
Is it okay if I come in, fiery one?
Since she's supposed to be a Yeti, who are native to, the Himalayas, it was always a little bit weird that Gen 1 Abby was Russian. Medusa can't be the Medusa of myth, because she was at school recently enough that it coincided with photographic yearbooks, so we're just going to assume she's named after the most famous Gorgon in history and move on. Yes, I know about the one joke about Dracula having braces that throws Draculaura's particularly nightmarish timeline even more out the window. We're not gonna talk about it. While we're on the subject of Medusa, though, on a story level, I like the concept the show has going with Deuce's snakes. There's 7 of them, each named for and representing one of the 7 deadly sins.
Get your wrath under control.
It's neat. It also makes absolutely no goddamn sense. Sure, today Greece is a majority Christian nation, but Gorgons are a decidedly pre-Christian concept. Additionally, Deuce and Manny are both depicted as actively aware of, and possibly even on speaking terms with, the literal Greek gods. There is absolutely no way this boy is Christian, so why are his snakes representing an inherently Christian concept? Make it make sense. Speaking of shoving Christian and Hellenistic concepts together into a horrible nightmare stew, Heath Burns. In Gen 1, he was a fire elemental. Simple as. Lots of those in various mythologies around the world. This time around, things got weird. At first, I thought they'd just changed it up and made him a demon of some kind, because of lines like these.
Speak of the devil!
No, the devil's Heath's dad. Has a goatee, invented pimples, and 24-hour news channels.
My dad told me 2 things. First, always practice your fiddle.
Classic things that are associated with popular folk tales and depictions of the Christian devil. Neat, I thought. He might have a less than stellar design, but that's an interesting touch of flair to his backstory. I would have loved if they spiced up his design to reflect that a bit. Keep the fire theme by all means, but maybe give him a tail, some horns. Literally anything other than this. God, they did him so dirty. Like, sure, Gen 1 Heath wasn't peak character design or anything, but he was better than this. And then I moved on, because why would I think anything weird was about to go down with Heath's parentage? More fool me. I should have expected them to be cowards about it, really. What I didn't expect, what I couldn't have expected, was for them to do a sudden 180 and introduce Heath's dad not as the devil, but as Hades.
Huh?
Ay. Where do I even begin with this? Well, first, it's obvious that the original intent wasn't to make Heath Hades' son. What with the references to the goatee and the fiddle and Heath's exclusion from anything Greek that previously came up, him being Hades' son came out of actual nowhere. Because Mattel or Nickelodeon or whoever are a bunch of cowards who I guess didn't want to take the risk of depicting the Christian devil as potentially sympathetic, except because he has to be Heath's father, and because of what the show already established about him, what we end up with is the mangled corpse of the Hades of myth shoved into Disney's Hades shoes and stretched horizontally in paint. The character the show calls Hades could easily have been Lucifer. He'd still have a lackluster design, but at least I'd be more on board with the characterization. Mostly because the Christian devil has such a wide range of characterizations available to pick and choose from. Anything from literal embodiment of all evil to trickster to ultimately sympathetic punisher of the wicked is there and up for grabs. As Hades, though, this just joins the long line of interpretations that saw King of the Underworld and went, oh, like the devil, and then didn't wait for anyone to correct them. Honestly, it makes even more sense for Lucifer to have the, well, daddy issues that impact his parenting than Hades. Is the Greek pantheon a paragon of healthy familial relationships? No, absolutely not. The amount of incest alone should tell you that. But still, Kronos didn't really have a relationship with Hades at all before he, ate him. And then Hades and his siblings who had been eaten just grew into adulthood inside Kronos before they were rescued by Zeus. I'm not denying there are issues there, but come on. Lucifer, the literal poster boy for rebellious children, having a rebellious son himself? How can you not see the potential there? Then we can spin Lucy's willingness to listen to Heath as a reflection on either his own grief at his lost place in heaven, or how questioning his father was what got him cut off in the first place, depending on how sympathetic you in particular are to the Christian god. Which I guess is why they didn't dare to actually make him the devil, because that would involve humanizing the devil. And certain moms on Facebook would have had things to say about that. Though I'm pretty sure those same Facebook moms see Monster High as satanic regardless, so I still think they're cowards for this. This version of Hades is a lazy, uninspired Disney ripoff, without any of the flair and charisma that made Disney's mangling of Hades excusable in the first place. And I am so deeply unimpressed. Though if I do have to accept Heath's dad as Hades, then I am going to assume his mom is Persephone. She divorced Hades over Underworld Inc.'s disastrous environmental impact. Heath rightfully blames his dad and the company for the divorce, which was the first spark that lit the flame of his environmentalism. As I told my friend who lets me rant to her about this show, Heath just has that child of divorce energy, If they don't at least give us this, I am going to riot. But that's all I have for you today. Thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, consider liking it and maybe subscribing. A massive thank you to the Entmoot, Pastel Pink Firefox. I will be back here Thursday after next. Bye!